The wealthy don't talk about money the way you do. They never say, "I can't afford it." They never blame the economy. They never wait for permission. Instead, they operate from a completely different playbook, one that's been passed down through their families for generations, whispered in boardrooms, and kept out of public view. Today, that changes. You're about to discover 7 money secrets that the rich teach their children in private, but will never tell you directly. These aren't tips. These aren't hacks. These are fundamental truths about how money actually works. And when you understand them, everything changes. Your decisions change. Your opportunities change. Your entire relationship with money changes. Are you ready? Chapter 1. Stop waiting for permission to be rich. Listen to me. Right now, there's something stopping you from building wealth. And you think it's money. You think it's timing. You think it's luck, connections, the economy, or your background. You're wrong. The real thing stopping you is permission. You're waiting for permission. You know it. I know it. The only person who doesn't seem to know it is you, because you won't admit it to yourself. Let me be specific. You're waiting for your boss's permission to earn more. You're waiting for your parents' permission to take a risk. You're waiting for society's permission to think differently about money. You're waiting for permission from some invisible authority to declare that you're finally allowed to be rich. And here's the brutal truth. Nobody is coming to give it to you. Nobody. Not your parents. Not your employer. Not your friends. Not society. Not God. Nobody is sitting around thinking about your permission slip. Nobody is waiting to validate you before you're allowed to succeed. You understand that intellectually, but you don't believe it. And that disbelief is costing you everything. Here's what the wealthy know that you don't. The entire system is designed to keep you waiting. Schools teach you to wait for teachers to approve your answers. Jobs teach you to wait for managers to approve your ideas. Culture teaches you to wait for society to approve your choices. It's a trap. A beautiful, comfortable trap. And the wealthy escaped it a long time ago. Let me give you a real example. Steve Jobs didn't wait for permission. He was kicked out of Apple, the company he founded. He didn't have credentials in physics, design, or business. He had a decision. He decided he was going to change the world. So he went out, and he started Next Computer. He bought Pixar. He came back to Apple. And now his name is synonymous with innovation. But it never would have happened if he had waited for someone to tell him it was okay. Compare that to thousands of talented people with degrees from prestigious universities, with perfect credentials, with the world telling them they're smart and capable. And where are they? They're still waiting and waiting for the promotion and waiting for the market to be right. Waiting for someone to permit them to start their business. They had the talent. They had the credentials. They didn't make the decision. That's the key. Talent doesn't matter if you're waiting for permission to use it. Credentials don't matter if you're waiting for someone to validate them. Intelligence doesn't matter if you're waiting for approval to deploy it. The wealthy understand something you're still fighting with. You already have permission. You always did. You were born with it. The moment you decided to claim it, you became dangerous. Dangerous to the status quo, dangerous to mediocrity, dangerous to poverty. Let me repeat that because it's critical. You already have permission. You've always had it. The only person withholding it is you. Now, I'm going to show you what this permission waiting costs you. And I want you to really see this, because this is where most people break. Imagine 2 people. Both of them are 25 years old. Both are talented. Both have the same IQ. Both grew up in similar circumstances. Person A decides at 25 to start a business. They don't wait for permission. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They don't wait for the economy to be right, for them to have enough savings, or for their parents to approve. They just start. It fails. They try again. By 35, they've built a profitable business that generates $200,000 a year. Not massive, but legitimate wealth. Person B is talented too, but Person B waits. They wait for their boss's permission. So they get a job at a good company. They're waiting for permission to be promoted, so they work hard, play politics, and get promoted to manager. They're making $100,000 a year at 35. Great, right? But here's the problem. They're still waiting. Still seeking approval. Still trapped. Now, let's jump to 55. Person A has been running their business for 30 years. It's not worth $200,000 a year anymore. It's worth millions. They've built systems. They've hired people. They've diversified. They have passive income. They have freedom. They have actual wealth. Person B. They've climbed the ladder. They're now a director, making $250,000 a year. Sounds good, doesn't it? Except they're still working 60-hour weeks. They're still seeking the CEO's approval. They still can't retire because the income stops the moment they stop working. And they're exhausted. The difference? 30 years of compound growth versus 30 years of linear salary increases. Permission delayed is wealth denied. Not delayed by the market. Not delayed by your circumstances. Delayed by you. Delayed by your refusal to claim the permission you already have. Let me ask you something. How many years have you already lost waiting? How many business ideas did you not start? How many investments did you not make? How many conversations didn't happen because you were waiting for approval? If you had started 10 years ago, where would you be right now? If you had made that investment 5 years ago, how much would it be worth today? This isn't theoretical. This is your actual life. This is your actual future being taxed by your hesitation. Every day you wait costs you. Every month you delay compounds that cost. Every year you're paralyzed by seeking permission is a year you could have been building, learning, failing, and succeeding. The wealthy understand this at a cellular level. They don't wait. They move even when they're not ready. Especially when they're not ready. Your first act of wealth is a decision, not a circumstance. Here's what most people don't understand about wealth. It doesn't start with money. It doesn't start with luck. It doesn't start with circumstances aligning perfectly. It starts with a decision. A single decision. The moment you decide, truly decide, not intellectually agree but actually decide in your bones, that you're going to build wealth, everything changes. Your brain changes. Your perception changes. Your behavior changes. Opportunities that were invisible become visible. People who could have helped you become visible. Paths that didn't exist suddenly appear. Why? Because the wealthy have made a decision that transforms everything. The decision comes first. The money follows the decision. I need you to hear that. Not money first, then decision. Decide first, then money. This is causality. This is how it actually works in the real world. Think about it this way. The moment you decide you're buying a red cars are everywhere. They were always there. But you didn't see them until you made the decision. Your brain started filtering for red cars because you told it to. The same thing happens with wealth. The moment you decide you're going to be wealthy, not hope, not wish, but actually decide, your brain becomes a wealth detection system. You start noticing opportunities others miss. You start making different choices about how you spend your time. You start reading different books. You start having different conversations. You start seeing patterns in how money works that were invisible to you before. A poor person stays in a job they hate because they haven't decided to leave. A wealthy person sees the same job and immediately calculates the opportunity cost, what they could be doing instead. Same job. Different decision. Different outcome. A poor person sees someone else's business and thinks, that's nice for them. A wealthy person sees the same business and thinks, I could build something like that, but better. Same observation. Different decision. Different trajectory. The decision comes first. The money follows the decision. This is not motivational speak. This is observable reality. So what's your decision? Have you actually made it? Or are you still in the I think wealth would be nice category? Because there's a massive difference between thinking wealth would be nice and actually deciding that you're going to build it, with or without permission, with or without approval, with or without the perfect timing. The wealthy have made that decision. That's why they're wealthy. Not because they got lucky. Not because they were born rich. But because at some point, they decided. And that decision changed everything. Now, here's what happens after the decision. You stop asking, can I? You start asking, how? Can't start conversations with permission granters. How to start conversations with problem solvers. The wealthy ask how. The poor ask, can I? That's the difference between being powerful and being powerless. You have a choice right now. You can keep waiting. You can keep seeking approval. You can keep asking people who don't care about your future for permission. Or you can make a decision. A real decision. The decision that you're going to build wealth regardless of what anyone thinks, regardless of the timing, regardless of whether you feel ready. The wealthy made that decision years ago. That's why they're ahead. That's why they're free. Not because they were smarter. Because they decided faster. So here's what you need to understand as we move forward. Permission is not something someone gives you. Permission is something you claim. You claim it by deciding. You claim it by moving. You claim it by refusing to wait any longer. The wealthy didn't wait for their parents' approval. They didn't wait for society to validate them. They didn't wait for the perfect credentials, the perfect moment, or the perfect capital. They made a decision, and they moved. Now you understand the first secret. You have a choice. You can keep waiting, or you can start deciding. You can keep asking permission, or you can start claiming it. You can keep being paralyzed by approval, or you can start building. The difference between someone who becomes wealthy and someone who doesn't isn't intelligence. It's not luck. It's not background. It's the decision to stop waiting and start moving. You've mastered your fear of taking the first step. Now, let's talk about where that first step actually goes. Let's talk about the one thing you're doing with your attention that's literally stealing your future. Chapter 2. Money follows attention, not effort. You're working hard. Let's be honest about that. You might be grinding 50, 60, maybe even 70 hours a week. You're exhausted. You're stressed. You're giving everything you have. And you're still broke. That's not a failure of effort. That's a failure of direction. You're working hard in the wrong place. You're giving your attention to activities that don't produce wealth. And here's what the wealthy know that you don't. Effort is worthless without attention placed correctly. The wealthy don't work harder than you. Often, they work less. But they work differently. They place their attention differently. And that difference in attention placement creates a chasm of difference in wealth. Let me be direct. Money doesn't follow effort. Money follows attention. This is the most important distinction you'll hear in this entire book. Write it down. Tattoo it on your brain. Because if you don't understand this, you will spend your entire life working hard and wondering why you're still struggling. The poor trade time for money, the rich trade attention for wealth. Okay, let's look at two different people. Both are intelligent. Both are hardworking. Both want to be wealthy. The first person is a surgeon. Brilliant. Went through years of education. Trained extensively. Works 60-hour weeks, saving lives. Incredible person. And they make $300,000 a year. That's legitimately good money. But here's the problem. They've capped their income at what they can physically do in those 60 hours. If they work 60 hours a week and make $300,000, then their income is mathematically limited to that formula. Want to make $600,000? Work 120 hours a week. Except they can't. They're human. They need sleep. They need family time. They need rest. So the surgeon's income, despite being high, is trapped. Effort has a ceiling. Now, let's look at the second person. They're an entrepreneur. Maybe they're not as formally educated as the surgeon. Maybe they had to work harder to get where they are. But instead of trading their time directly for money, they're focusing on building a system. They built a business with 10 employees. Those employees do the work. The entrepreneur's attention is on systems, on strategy, on scaling. Now, the business generates $500,000 a year. The entrepreneur works 40 hours a week. They could add another 10 employees and double the revenue while reducing their work hours. Attention has no ceiling. This is the fundamental difference between the poor and the rich. The poor optimize for effort. They work harder, hoping that more effort will earn them more money. The rich optimize for attention. They focus on things that generate returns regardless of their effort. Here's what you need to understand. Your effort is not your constraint. Your attention is. You have 24 hours a day, just like the surgeon. You have a limited amount of time and energy, just like everyone else. The question is, where are you placing that limited attention? If you're placing your attention on a job, trading hours for dollars, you've already lost. You've already decided to cap your income at what you can physically produce in a day. That's the choice you've made. You might not realize it's a choice, but it is. The poor ask, how do I work harder? The rich ask, how do I make my attention more valuable? These are completely different questions leading to completely different lives. Let me give you real numbers. Let's say you're making $50,000 a year at your job. You work 2,000 hours a year. That's $25 per hour of your attention. Now, let's say you want to double your income to $100,000. There are two ways to do it. Option 1. Work 4,000 hours a year. Get a second job. Work weekends. Hustle harder. You're now working 80 hours a week. You've doubled your income through doubled effort. Option 2. Place your attention on something that scales. Build a side business. Create a product. Develop a skill that commands higher rates. Write a book. Build an audience. Develop an expertise that's valuable to many people, not just one employer. Now your attention generates $100,000 while you're still working 2,000 hours, or maybe even 1,500 hours. One option trades more time for more money. One option trades attention for leverage. The wealthy choose option 2. Every single time. They're not smarter about working harder. They're smarter about where they place their attention. The attention drain, why you're stuck. Now, here's the problem. Your attention is being systematically stolen from you. Every single day. And you're not even fighting back. Where is your attention going right now? Let's be honest. How many hours a week do you spend on social media? How many hours a week do you spend watching entertainment? How many hours a week do you spend on urgent but completely unimportant tasks? How many hours a week do you spend in meetings that produce nothing? How many hours a week do you spend worrying about things you can't control? Be specific. Don't estimate. Actually count. The average person spends 4 hours a day on their phone. That's 28 hours a week. That's 1,456 hours a year. That's 9 years of your life, if you live to 80. 9 years of your life, gone to social media, entertainment, and distraction. Now, what if you took even half of that attention, 14 hours a week, and placed it on something that generates wealth? A side business. A skill. An investment education. A network. 14 hours a week for a year is 728 hours. That's a complete education. That's the start of a business. That's the foundation of wealth. But you're not doing that. You're placing your attention on entertainment. And the companies that provide that entertainment are geniuses at capturing and holding your attention. They're literally employing psychologists and engineers to make their platforms as addictive as possible. They're stealing your attention, and you're letting them do it for free. Your attention is the most valuable thing you own. And you're giving it away. The poor give their attention to things that don't produce wealth. They watch TV. They scroll Instagram. They gossip. They worry. They complain. They consume. None of these activities generates money. None of them builds assets. None of them creates leverage. Yet they consume the majority of their attention. The wealthy are ruthless about their attention. They ask one question about every activity: does this generate, protect, or grow my wealth? If the answer is no, it doesn't get their attention. Full stop. They don't have time for entertainment that doesn't serve them. They don't have time for relationships that drain them. They don't have time for activities that produce nothing. Their attention is allocated like venture capital, only to investments with returns. You have a choice. You can keep giving your attention to things that produce nothing. Or you can start treating your attention like the precious resource it actually is. Let me be clear, I'm not saying you can never watch TV or enjoy yourself. I'm saying that if you're placing most of your attention on consumption rather than creation, you're choosing poverty. You're not choosing it consciously, but you're choosing it. Every hour of attention spent on consumption is an hour your wealth is being delayed. Every hour. It's not judgment. It's math. Redirecting your attention to wealth-building activities. So here's what the wealthy teach their children about attention. They teach them to ask, where should my attention be going? The answer is, places where it compounds. The wealthy focus on things that generate returns that compound over time. They learn skills that compound their earning power for decades. They build systems that compound their income over the years. They cultivate relationships that compound their opportunities over lifetimes. They invest in assets that compound their wealth over decades. Everything is about compounding. Because compounding is what turns effort into wealth. Let me give you concrete examples. A wealthy person focuses on learning sales skills. Now, they can sell anything to anyone. That skill will be valuable over the next 40 years of their career. Every job they get pays more because they can sell. Every business they build succeeds because they can sell. That attention placed one-time compounds for decades. A wealthy person focuses on building an audience. They start a podcast, a YouTube channel, a blog, and a Twitter account. They're consistent. After a year, they have 10,000 followers. After 3 years, they have 100,000. Now they have a platform where they can sell products, services, or consulting. The attention placed in year 1 compounds into multiple revenue streams in year 5. A wealthy person focuses on building a business system. They build a business once, then they build systems so that other people can run it. Now, their attention generates income independent of their effort. They can work less while earning more. A wealthy person focuses on their network. They invest time in relationships with people who are building, learning, and creating. These relationships open doors, create opportunities, and generate wealth throughout their lifetime. These are not magical activities. They're not lucky breaks. Their attention is placed strategically on things that compound. Now, contrast that with where most people place their attention. They place it on their job, hoping their boss will promote them. They place it in entertainment, hoping it will make them happy. They place it on shopping, hoping it will make them feel successful. They place it on worry, hoping it will prevent bad things from happening. None of these compounds. None of these builds wealth. Attention on wealth-building compounds. Attention elsewhere compounds poverty. This is not rhetoric. This is an observable, measurable reality. So here's what you need to do. Right now, today, you need to audit your attention. Where are you actually placing it? Not where you think you are. Actually. Keep a log for a week. Write down where your attention goes in 15-minute increments. You're going to be shocked. Once you see the truth, you make a decision. You're going to redirect that attention. Some of it. Maybe you can't eliminate all entertainment or distraction. But can you redirect 10 hours a week? Can you redirect 5 hours a week? Can you redirect even 3 hours a week? 3 hours a week is 156 hours a year. That's enough time to learn a new skill. Build the foundation of a business. Start building an audience. Develop expertise in an area that's valuable to people. 3 hours a week. That's it. Money follows attention. This is not a theory. This is the law. The wealthy understand this. That's why they're wealthy. Not because they work harder. Because they focus on what counts. They are ruthless about it. They don't negotiate with themselves about their attention. They don't try to find time for wealth-building activities. They make it non-negotiable. Your attention is your life. Your life is your wealth. The more attention you place on building wealth, the more wealth you build. The more attention you place elsewhere, the more that elsewhere costs you in terms of the wealth you could have built. You've now seen the truth. Effort is not the constraint. Attention is. The wealthy have figured this out. They've stopped trying to work harder and started thinking about where to place their attention for maximum return. This is the second secret. And it changes everything once you actually apply it. You understand now that your attention is your most valuable asset. The question is, where are you going to place it? And more importantly, when are you going to start? You've learned that money follows attention. Now, let's talk about where that money goes once you have it. Because most people earn it and immediately destroy it through invisible decisions they don't even know they're making. Chapter 3, The Price Tag Delusion. You're not buying objects, you're buying stories. Chapter 3, The Price Tag Delusion. You're not buying objects, you're buying stories. I want you to think about something you bought recently. Something expensive. Maybe it was a car. Maybe it was clothes. Maybe it was a watch, a pair of shoes, or a gadget. Something you spent money on that made you feel something. Made you feel successful. Made you feel like you'd arrived. Now I want you to ask yourself why you really bought it. Don't lie to yourself. Not out loud, not in your head. Why did you really buy it? Because I'm going to tell you the truth, and it might hurt. You didn't buy it for what it does. You bought it for the story it tells about you. The car doesn't matter. The story does. The watch doesn't matter. The story does. The clothes don't matter. The story does. Every single thing you buy is a story you're purchasing about yourself. And most people are paying premium prices for stories that are complete lies. Every purchase is a statement about your identity. Here's what the wealthy know that keeps them wealthy. They understand the psychology of purchasing. They know exactly what they're doing when they buy something. And most of the time, they're not buying the thing. They're not. Let me be specific. A $5,000 watch keeps time exactly as well as a $50 watch. Exactly. The function is identical. But someone who buys the $5,000 watch isn't buying the function. They're buying the story. They're buying the signaling. They're buying the fantasy that this watch will make them look successful, impressive, worthy. Now, here's the reality. It doesn't. The people who matter don't care about your watch. The people who care about your watch don't matter. That's a truth the wealthy figured out long ago. That's why they don't buy based on signal. They buy based on utility. A wealthy person buys a car because it's reliable and it serves a purpose. A poor person buys a car because it makes them look successful. That distinction is everything. Let me give you a real scenario. A 28-year-old makes $55,000 a year. They see a BMW. It's beautiful. It's prestigious. It signals success. So they buy it. $45,000. They finance it over 5 years. Now they're paying $900 a month for a car. Meanwhile, a wealthy person making $200,000 a year buys a Toyota. Reliable, practical, $30,000. They pay cash. Now they're spending $500 a month in insurance and maintenance, not debt payments. Who's wealthier? The person driving the BMW or the person driving the Toyota? This isn't a trick question. It's obvious. The person driving the Toyota is wealthier because they understand that the car is not a statement about success. The car is a tool. But you don't see it that way, do you? You see the BMW, and you feel something. You see the person in the BMW, and you think they've arrived. You think they're successful. That's the story the BMW is selling, and you're buying it. Here's what's actually happening. That person in the BMW is desperate. They're so insecure about whether they've succeeded that they need a car to prove it to everyone around them. They're buying the story because they don't believe they can be successful without it. The wealthy person in the Toyota? They don't need the story anymore. They've already arrived. They don't need a watch to prove it. They don't need a car to prove it. They don't need an expensive outfit to prove it. They're already sure of themselves. That's the difference between someone who's wealthy and someone who's playing wealthy. Now, let's expand this. It's not just cars and watches. It's everything. Your entire life is a series of purchases that tell a story about who you are. The question is that story true? Or is it a lie you're paying premium prices for? You buy expensive clothes to signal that you have taste and status. You buy designer labels so people think you're sophisticated. You buy the latest phone so people think you're up to date and successful. You buy expensive restaurants to impress dates and clients. You buy a big house to signal that you've made it. All of these are stories. All of these are signals. And all of them are paid for with money you could have used to actually build wealth. The poor buy things to prove they've arrived. The rich buy things because they've already arrived. That's the entire distinction. The story you're telling with your money right now. I want you to think about the last 5 significant purchases you made. Not your groceries. Not your gas. The big purchases. The ones that felt meaningful. Now I want you to be brutally honest about each one. Why did you actually buy it? Did you buy it because you needed it? Or did you buy it to impress someone? Did you buy it because it serves a function? Or did you buy it to feel a certain way about yourself? Did you buy it because it was the best value? Or did you buy it because of what it signals? Here's what most people discover when they do this exercise. They're buying almost entirely for signal. They're buying to impress. They're buying to prove. They're buying to feel successful without actually being successful. Your purchases are your autobiography. They tell the story of your beliefs, your fears, your insecurities, your values. And if you look at that autobiography honestly, what does it say about you? If you're spending money on expensive things to impress people, your autobiography says, I'm insecure. I don't believe I'm valuable unless I can show it to others. That's the story your money is telling. If you're spending money on status symbols and luxury goods, your autobiography says, I believe my worth is determined by what I own. That's the story your money is telling. If you're spending money on things that don't generate returns and don't serve you, your autobiography says, I don't understand the difference between spending and investing. I don't understand compound growth. I don't understand wealth. That's the story your money is telling. Now, I'm not saying you can never buy nice things. I'm not saying you have to live like a monk. I'm saying you need to understand what story you're telling before you tell it. I'm saying you need to be conscious about your narrative. The wealthy are conscious. They're aware. They ask, what story is this purchase telling? Is that the story I want to tell? And if the answer is no, they don't buy it. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is. It doesn't matter how much they can afford it. If it tells the wrong story, they refuse. Because the wealthy understand something critical. The story you tell with your money shapes the person you become. If you tell the story of someone who's insecure and trying to prove themselves, you become that person. If you tell the story of someone who values security and growth over signal, you become that person. Your purchases aren't just transactions. They're identity markers. They're commitments to a narrative about who you are. And that narrative becomes reality. So ask yourself right now, what story am I telling with my money? Is it the story I want to tell? Is it the story that's going to make me wealthy? Or is it the story that's going to keep me poor? Challenge. Think of one purchase you're about to make. And before you make it, ask yourself honestly, am I buying this because I need it or because I want it for functional reasons? Or am I buying this to tell a story to other people? If it's the latter, don't buy it. I'm serious. Stop. Refuse to tell that story. The true cost of the story. Now, here's where it gets really painful. Because it's not just the money you spend today, it's the future you're paying for. A $5,000 watch costs more than $5,000. It costs the hours you have to work to earn that $5,000. If you make $50 an hour, that watch costs you 100 hours of your life. 100 hours. That's 2.5 weeks of full-time work for a watch. But it doesn't stop there. That $5,000 could have been invested. At a 7% annual return, $5,000 grows to $10,000 in 10 years. It becomes $25,000 in 26 years. So that watch doesn't just cost you 100 hours of work today. It costs you $25,000 in future wealth. Let me say that again. A $5,000 watch costs you $25,000 in future wealth. That's the real price tag. Now, multiply that across all your purchases. The expensive car, the designer clothes, the fancy dinners, the luxury vacations, the status symbols you can't afford and are financing with debt. What's the actual cost? Let me do the math for someone who spends $500 a month on status purchases and Signal. That's $6,000 a year. That's $60,000 in 10 years. At a 7% return, that $60,000 would have been $140,000 in 20 years. So by spending $500 a month on Signal, you're giving up $140,000 in wealth you could have built. Let me ask you, is the story worth $140,000? Is looking successful worth giving up being successful? That's the real choice. It's not by the nice thing or don't. It's by the nice thing and stay poor, or refuse the nice thing and become wealthy. Those are the actual options. The wealthy made this choice a long time ago. They decided the story isn't worth it. They decided that being wealthy is more important than appearing wealthy. They decided that real confidence doesn't need a signal. Real success doesn't need proof. Real value doesn't need display. And so they buy things based on value, not signal. They buy things that serve them, not that impress others. They buy things that generate returns or that they genuinely need. And they refuse to pay premium prices for stories that don't matter. This is not deprivation. This is not being cheap. This is about having your priorities straight. This is understanding the difference between price and cost. The price is what you pay today. The cost is what you pay in terms of future wealth, future freedom, and future opportunities. The wealthy calculate the cost, not the price. That's why they stay wealthy. So here's what you need to do. You need to wake up to the stories your money tells. You need to see how much you're paying for signal instead of function. You need to calculate the true cost of your purchases, not just today, but across decades. Then you need to make a choice. Are you going to keep buying stories? Are you going to keep trying to look successful while staying poor? Or are you going to stop the stories and start building actual wealth? The wealthy made this choice. That's why they're wealthy. That's why they're free. That's why they don't have to work forever. You've learned that your purchases are stories. You've learned what those stories cost. Now let's talk about the biggest story most people tell with their money, the one that actually steals their future. It's called debt. Chapter 4. Debt is the poor man's leverage. Equity is the rich man's. There's a system in place. It's designed to extract wealth from you for the rest of your life. And you're voluntarily participating in it. You think you're being smart. You think you're taking advantage of the system. You think you're being strategic. You're not. You're being hunted. And the hunters are very, very good at their job. I'm talking about debt. Consumer debt. Credit cards. Car loans. Personal loans. The entire apparatus of borrowing money to buy things you can't afford. It's not financial leverage. It's a trap. And you've already probably stepped into it. Most people have. Let me be direct. Debt is a system designed to keep poor people poor and middle-class people middle-class. Period. Full stop. That's its function. And it works perfectly. The two types of leverage. One enslaves, one liberates. Now, here's where most people get confused. Because leverage exists in two forms. And they are not the same thing. Not even close. The first type of leverage is debt leverage. This is when you borrow money to consume something. You want a car you can't afford, so you borrow $40,000. You want a house you can't afford, so you borrow $300,000. You want to go on vacation, so you put it on a credit card. You want clothes, so you finance them. This is debt leverage. Here's what happens with debt leverage. You get the thing today, but you pay for it tomorrow. And you pay with interest. A lot of interest. So you're paying more than the thing costs. You're paying the price of the thing plus the cost of borrowing the money. And that cost is extracted from your future earnings. For years, sometimes decades, debt leverage multiplies your losses. If you buy a $40,000 car with debt and the car depreciates to $30,000, you've lost $10,000. But you've paid $45,000 in total, including interest. So you've actually lost $15,000. You're underwater before you even own it. Debt destroys wealth. It doesn't create it. Debt is the poor man's leverage because it feels empowering in the moment, but it enslaves you in the long term. Now, the second type of leverage is equity leverage. This is when you use money, capital, systems, or other people's labor to create an asset that generates return. You have $50,000, so you invest it in a business that generates 15% returns. That's $7,500 a year. You're using your capital to generate income. Or you use a 5% bank loan to invest in real estate that appreciates 8% a year. You're capturing the spread. That's 3% profit on someone else's money. Or you build a business with your own capital and other people's labor. The business generates $500,000 a year. Your labor and capital created a system that produces wealth. That's equity leverage. Equity leverage creates wealth. It liberates you. Equity is the rich man's leverage because it creates streams of income that don't depend on your effort. These two types of leverage are completely different. In fact, they're opposite. One takes from you. One gives to you. One destroys your future. One builds it. And yet, most people spend their entire lives using the first type and avoiding the second. They're in debt. They're borrowing money to consume. And they're terrified of using equity leverage, investing, starting businesses, and taking strategic risks with capital. You have a choice. You can use debt to buy things that make you poorer. Or you can use equity to build things that make you wealthier. But you cannot do both. You cannot be buried in consumer debt and also be building equity. You don't have enough capital for both. The wealthy made this choice long ago. They chose equity. That's why they're wealthy. The poor made the opposite choice. They chose debt. That's why they're poor. Why the poor stay trapped in debt cycles. Now, I want to show you how the debt trap actually works. Because it's not a trap if you don't understand it. Once you understand it, you can't claim ignorance. Debt feels good at first. You want something. A car. A nicer apartment. A vacation. Something to make you feel successful or happy. But you can't afford it. You don't have the money. So you borrow it. And suddenly, you have the thing. You feel successful. You feel like you've arrived. You feel powerful. That feeling is the trap. Because now you're obligated. Every month, money is taken from your account for debt payments. Not for something productive. Not for something that generates a return. Just gone. Extracted. A $30,000 car loan at 6% interest for 5 years means you're paying about $580 a month. That's $34,800 total. You paid $4,800 in interest alone. That's $4,800 that could have been invested. That's $4,800 that could have been used to start a business. That's $4,800 extracted from your future. But it doesn't stop there. Because while you're paying for the car, you're not building wealth. You're paying interest. And interest is the price you pay for wanting something before you can afford it. Interest is literally you paying to have been impatient. Now, the car depreciates. In 3 years, it's worth $18,000. But you're still paying $580 a month. You're upside down in the loan. You owe more than it's worth. And you're trapped. You can't sell it without losing money. You can't walk away. You're locked in. This is where the debt trap becomes a debt cycle. You're stuck with the car. You're stuck with the payments. You're stuck working to pay for something that's actively losing value. Meanwhile, the years are passing. You could have been investing. You could have been building. You could have been creating equity. Instead, you were paying interest. Now, multiply this across multiple debts. A car loan. Credit card debt. Student loans. A mortgage you can't afford. Suddenly, 40 to 50% of your income is going to debt payments. 40 to 50%. That's not paying for housing, food, or medicine. That's paying for things you already consumed. That's extracted wealth. Every dollar of interest is a dollar stolen from your future. This is not hyperbole. This is math. Every dollar you pay in interest is a dollar you could have invested. That dollar at 7% annual return compounds into $7.75 in 30 years. So that interest payment isn't just costing you $1 today. It's costing you $7.75 in future wealth. Here's what the wealthy teach their children about debt. Never pay interest on consumption. Ever. Full stop. This is a non-negotiable rule. If you can't afford it with cash, you can't afford it. You wait. You save. You plan. But you don't borrow to consume. The reason this rule works is that it forces you to make intentional decisions. You want a car, but you don't have $30,000. So you either wait and save, which takes discipline and commitment, buy a used car for $10,000, which serves the same function, or ride the bus, which frees up the entire $30,000 for investment. Any of these options is better than debt, because any of these options leaves you in control. With debt, you're not in control. The lender is. Your future is mortgaged to pay for your past. Debt is time purchased at a loss. You get time today, the car now instead of when you can afford it. But you pay for it with years of future time, years of payments, years of work to pay the interest. The wealthy refuse this exchange. They'd rather wait. They'd rather save. They'd rather make intentional choices. Because they understand that time is their actual wealth. And they refuse to trade future time for present consumption. Building real leverage through equity and assets. Now, let's talk about the opposite. Equity leverage. This is how the wealthy actually build wealth. The wealthy understand that leverage is powerful. It's the key to exponential growth. But they use it strategically. They borrow money at 5% to invest in something that returns 10%, capturing the 5% spread. They build businesses that employ other people's labor. They create intellectual property that generates passive income. They buy assets that appreciate and generate cash flow. Here's a real example. A wealthy person has $100,000 in capital. They could put it in the stock market and hope for 7% annual returns. Or they could use it as a down payment on a rental property. They get a $400,000 mortgage, buy a property for $500,000, and borrow at 4% interest. The rental property generates $2,500 a month in rental income. That's $30,000 a year. After the mortgage, maintenance, taxes, and insurance, they net about $600 a month, or $7,200 a year. That's a 7.2% return on their $100,000 down payment. But here's where it gets powerful. The property is appreciating. If it appreciates just 3% a year, that's $15,000 in equity per year. So they're making $7,200 in cash flow plus $15,000 in equity appreciation. That's $22,200 in total wealth creation from their $100,000 investment. That's a 22% annual return. And they used leverage. They borrowed $400,000 at 4% to create all this wealth. The interest they paid is deductible. The depreciation is deductible. The entire tax structure supports this type of leverage. Compare that to someone who paid cash for a $100,000 car. The car depreciates immediately. They paid interest in the form of lost investment returns. The payments are not deductible. They've destroyed wealth instead of creating it. That's the difference between equity leverage and debt leverage. One creates wealth. One destroys it. One aligns the system in your favor. One aligns it against you. The wealthy use leverage relentlessly. But they use it to build, not to consume. They borrow to invest in assets, businesses, and income-producing property. They refuse to borrow to consume. And this is the critical point. You cannot do both. You cannot be buried in consumer debt and also be building equity. If you have $500 a month going to car payments, that's $500 you don't have for investment. If you have $1,500 a month going to credit card payments, that's $1,500 you don't have for business capital. Debt consumes your capital. It literally removes it from your life. Equity multiplies your capital. It literally adds to your wealth. The wealthy eliminate consumer debt ruthlessly. They make it the priority. Because they understand that $100,000 freed from debt payments is $100,000 that can be invested. And $100,000 invested at a 15% annual return in a business generates $15,000 in additional wealth per year. Over 30 years, that's $450,000 in wealth building. So by eliminating debt and redirecting that payment toward equity, you're not just saving the interest. You're allowing yourself to build wealth that compounds for decades. Here's the bottom line. There's a choice in front of you. You can continue using debt leverage to consume things that make you poorer. Or you can eliminate that debt and use equity leverage to build things that make you wealthier. These are not equal options. One leads to poverty. One leads to wealth. The wealthy made this choice. That's why they're wealthy. You've now seen the truth about debt and equity. You understand that one enslaves and one liberates. You understand that the choice is clear. Now, let's talk about the asset the wealthy invest in that most people completely ignore. Chapter 5. The rich invest in time, not just money. You think wealth is about money. It's not. That's the mistake everyone makes. They think that if they can just make more money, they'll be wealthy. So they chase income. They work harder. They ask for raises. They try to squeeze more dollars out of their lives. But they're thinking about it completely wrong. Real wealth is not about money. Real wealth is about time. Specifically, time that's not tied to your labor. Time that's free. Time that belongs to you. Time that you don't have to trade for dollars. The wealthy understand this. That's why they're wealthy. They stopped thinking about money and started thinking about time. And that shift in perspective changed everything. Let me be direct. Money comes and goes. Time is life. And the wealthy invest in time first. That's the hierarchy. Not the other way around. Time is the only resource you actually own. Think about it. You own your time. That's it. That's the only resource that's actually yours. You don't own your money. You can lose it, or it can be stolen, or the economy can collapse, and it can become worthless. You don't own your house. The bank owns it until you pay it off, or the government can seize it. You don't own your job. Your company can fire you tomorrow. But your time? That's yours. Every second of it. How you spend it is your only real choice. And the wealthy have figured out that protecting and multiplying their time is the actual path to wealth. Most people trade their time directly for money. They work 40 hours a week at a job. They get paid based on those 40 hours. More hours equal more money. It's linear. It's simple. And it's a trap. Because there are only 24 hours in a day. You need 8 hours of sleep. You need 8 hours for basic life maintenance, eating, hygiene, commuting, family, and health. That leaves 8 hours for work. If you work 8 hours for $25 an hour, you make $200. That's your daily ceiling. You cannot earn more than $200 that day without working more than 8 hours. This is the trap of trading time for money. Your income has a physical ceiling. The moment you understand that, you understand the poverty trap. Now, the wealthy do something different. They don't trade their time for money. They trade their attention for leverage. They build systems. They create businesses. They develop expertise. They build audiences. They create intellectual property. They do things that generate income independent of their time investment. A poor person invests $10,000 in a savings account at 0.5% interest. They make $50 a year. Their capital made the return. A wealthy person invests $10,000 in learning a skill that doubles their earning power. Now they can command $50 an hour instead of $25. Over 40 years of work, that's a $1 million difference in career earnings. Their investment of time and learning yielded a return that's 20,000 times the investment. The wealthy invest in time first because time generates returns that money cannot match. Let me give you a real example. Someone spends $5,000 on a copywriting course. They spend 100 hours learning. Now they can write sales copy that converts at 5% instead of 1%. This skill compounds throughout their career. If they use it in their business, it increases revenue by 10%. Over 20 years, that 10% compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional revenue. All from a $5,000 investment in time and learning. Compare that to someone who invests $5,000 in a stock fund, expecting a 7% annual return. They make $350 a year. It's respectable, but it's nothing compared to the copywriting skill. Time invested in building skills, systems, and leverage multiplies far more than money invested in passive returns. This is especially true early in your career when you have limited capital but unlimited time. The investments most people never make. Here's what's tragic. Most people don't even know what they should invest their time in. So they invest it in nothing. They come home from work and watch TV. They spend weekends on social media. They spend their free time on consumption rather than on investments that would multiply their future. The wealthy, on the other hand, are voracious about time investments. They read constantly, not for entertainment, but for learning. They take courses. They attend workshops. They join masterminds. They get coaching. They listen to podcasts. They build systems. They write. They create. They network. Every moment of their time is allocated toward something that compounds. Here's what the wealthy prioritize. First, they invest in high-income skills. Sales, negotiation, leadership, marketing, writing, speaking, programming. Any skill that directly increases their earning capacity. If they can increase their hourly rate from $50 to $100, that's worth years of investment. Second, they invest in systems and automation. They build businesses with documentation, processes, and people. The goal is to remove themselves from the critical path. So the business generates income without their daily effort. This is how they escape the time for money trap entirely. Third, they invest in their network. They spend time with people ahead of them who can teach and mentor. They spend time with peers who are building things. They invest in relationships because relationships generate opportunities that compound for decades. Fourth, they invest in learning about money itself. Investing, tax strategy, business structure, financial literacy. They understand that ignorance in these areas costs more than any course could teach them. Most people do none of these things. They go to work, they come home, they consume, they sleep. Repeat. They're not investing in anything. They're liquidating their time for immediate consumption. And that consumption doesn't build anything. What you're not investing in is what's holding you back. If you're not investing in a skill that compounds, you're stuck at your current earning level. If you're not investing in systems, you're stuck working forever. If you're not investing in relationships, you're stuck competing alone. If you're not investing in financial literacy, you're stuck making financial mistakes that cost you thousands. The wealthy chose differently. They chose to invest their time in things that would multiply their future. That's why they're free. Compounding your time investment. Now, here's where the magic actually happens. It's the compounding. When you invest time in learning a skill, that skill compounds for decades. You learn sales at 25. That skill is with you at 35, 45, 55. Every job you get for the next 40 years is better because you can sell. Every business you build succeeds because you can sell. The time invested in learning sales compounds exponentially. When you invest time in building a system, that system compounds. You spend a year documenting your processes, training people, and building automation. After a year, the system is running without you. Now you have time freed up. That freed up time can be invested in new systems, new businesses, and new opportunities. One system leads to multiple systems. Multiple systems lead to freedom. When you invest time in relationships, those relationships compound. You meet someone at 30. You stay in touch. At 45, that person becomes a major partner. At 55, they send you the biggest deal of your career. The time invested in the relationship, compounded over 25 years, created an opportunity you couldn't see when you made the investment. The wealthy think in decades when making time investments. The poor think in days. This is the entire difference. The poor ask, will this help me this week? The wealthy ask, will this help me for the next 30 years? This time horizon changes decisions entirely. The poor are trying to optimize for immediate relief. The wealthy are optimizing for long-term compound growth. These strategies are in direct opposition. Time invested today multiplies into decades of wealth. That's how the rich think. They're not looking for quick wins. They're looking for investments that compound over lifetimes. Here's what you need to understand. You have the same time horizon available to you. You have 30 to 40 years of earning potential left. Maybe more. That time is going to pass anyway. The question is, what are you going to invest it in? Are you going to invest it in the wrong things, in consumption, in distraction? Or are you going to invest it in skills, systems, relationships, and learning? Because at 65, you're going to look back either way. And you're going to either see decades of compounded growth or decades of time liquidated for nothing. You have a choice. Right now. Today. You can keep spending your time on things that don't compound. Or you can start investing it in things that do. The wealthy made this choice. That's why they're not working at 65. That's why they have options. That's why they have freedom. You now understand that wealth is about time, not money. You understand that the wealthy invest in skills, systems, relationships, and learning. You understand that these investments compound over decades into extraordinary returns. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to continue spending your time on consumption? Or are you going to start investing it strategically? Are you going to keep consuming other people's content, or are you going to start creating? Are you going to keep competing in the job market, or start building something? The wealthy made this choice years ago. That's why they're ahead. That's why they're free. You've learned that time is your actual asset. You've learned what the wealthy invest in. Now let's talk about the biggest mistake most people make, staying in the wrong game entirely. Chapter 6. Stop competing for scraps. Build your own game. You're playing a game. Right now. Today. You might not realize it, but you are. And you're losing. The game is a competition. You're competing for jobs. You're competing for promotions. You're competing for clients. You're competing for attention. You're competing against thousands of other people who have the same skills, the same credentials, the same background. You're all fighting over the same scraps. And the wealthy? They're not in that game anymore. They left. They built their own game. A game with different rules. A game where they have an unfair advantage. A game where competition is irrelevant. That's the difference. The wealthy don't compete. They dominate. They don't fight for scraps. They create abundance. And they do this by refusing to play the game everyone else is playing. This is not motivational talk. This is a strategy. This is how wealth actually works. Competition is for the poor. Creation is for the rich. Let me show you what I mean. There are thousands of management consultants worldwide. They have MBAs from prestigious universities. They worked at McKinsey, Bain, or Boston Consulting Group. They're competing directly for the same clients. The same Fortune 500 companies. The same projects. They're fighting over the same pie. That's competition. Zero sum. One person's gain is another person's loss. The best consultants win. The average ones struggle. The worst ones fail. Now, there's another consultant. They don't have an MBA from Harvard. They didn't work at a major consulting firm. They looked at the market and asked a different question. Where is the gap? Where is the market underserved? Who is nobody serving well? They found it. Small business owners. Entrepreneurs with revenue between $1 million and $10 million. They're too big for the small consultants and too small for McKinsey. They're invisible. Nobody's serving them. So this consultant built a consulting practice for exactly that market. They became experts in scaling businesses from $1 million to $10 million. They built frameworks specific to that size. They built marketing around that niche. They built case studies for that market. Now they don't compete with McKinsey. They compete with nobody. Because they're the only consultant focused on that specific niche. They have an unfair advantage. They're not fighting for scraps. They're creating their own market. That's the difference. Competition has winners and losers. Creation has abundance. The wealthy understand this. They see a market where everyone's competing for the same thing, and they ask, how can I create a different game? They don't try to beat the competitors. They leave the game entirely. This applies to everything. Do you want to be a writer? Don't compete to get a book deal from a major publisher. There are thousands of people competing for 100 deals. Build an audience directly. Sell your books directly to your audience. Create your own game where you don't compete with anyone. You want to be a coach? Don't compete for clients in your local market. Build an online coaching business. Serve clients nationally or globally. Create a game where geography is irrelevant and competition is eliminated. You want to build a business? Don't compete in saturated markets with established incumbents. Find an underserved niche. Build specifically for them. Create a game where you're the only player. The wealthy don't compete. They dominate through specialization and creation. This is a strategy. This is how you actually win. Why you're losing in everyone else's game. Now, let me show you why you're struggling. It's not because you're not good enough. It's because you're playing the wrong game. You're competing for a job in a market with thousands of other candidates. You have to be better than all of them. That's exhausting. You have to have better credentials, better experience, better resume, better interview skills. You're constantly being compared to everyone else. Meanwhile, your competition in that job market includes people who have more experience than you, people who have better connections, people who have gone to better schools, and people who have resources you don't have. You're fighting from a position of weakness. You're competing in a game where others have advantages. That's not a winning strategy. That's a losing strategy. And you're losing. The wealthy recognize this. They ask, how can I compete where I have an advantage instead of a disadvantage? Instead of competing for a job where they're competing against people with better credentials, they build something where their unique combination of skills and perspective is an advantage. Maybe you have been a teacher and an entrepreneur. That's unusual. Combine those things. Build a platform to teach other entrepreneurs. Your teaching background is now an advantage, not a disadvantage. Your entrepreneurial experience is an advantage. You're not competing with other teachers or other entrepreneurs. You're creating something at the intersection. The worst position is competing hard for a prize someone else controls. You're not in control. Someone else designed the game. Someone else sets the rules. Someone else decides winners and losers. You're just hoping to be picked. The wealthy refuse this. They ask, what game can I design where I control the rules? Because if you control the game, you can't lose. You can't be outcompete. Competition is irrelevant. This is not arrogance. This is sanity. You're not going to win at someone else's game where you don't have an advantage. That's not a plan. That's a fantasy. The plan is to build a game that gives you an unfair advantage. Your competitive advantage is your unique game. Here's what the wealthy know. Your competitive advantage is not what you're good at. Your competitive advantage is what only you can do. What is the unique combination of your skills, experiences, perspectives, and interests? What do you know that others don't? What have you done that's uncommon? What do you see in the world that others miss? What do you care about that others ignore? That unique combination cannot be competed against. It can be copied, eventually, but not immediately. And by the time it's copied, you've already won. Let me give you real examples. Gary Vaynerchuk is not the smartest marketer in the world. He's not the most talented. But he's the only person who combines his specific background in wine, his understanding of social media, his personality, his work ethic, and his perspective on attention. That combination is unique. That combination is his competitive advantage. Nobody can compete with him at being Gary Vaynerchuk. So he built his entire career around being exactly that. He didn't try to be a traditional marketer. He didn't try to compete for the same clients as McKinsey or other agencies. He built his own game where being Gary Vaynerchuk is the whole point. Tim Ferriss is not the smartest person in the world. But he's the only person who combines his interest in optimization, his ability to communicate, his willingness to experiment on himself, and his perspective on minimalism. That combination is unique. So he built a career around that uniqueness. He doesn't compete with other business experts. He dominates his niche, where his specific combination of traits is irreplaceable. Build the game, only you can win. Make competition irrelevant. This is the strategy. Now you need to figure out what your unique game is. It's not your job title. It's not your credentials. It's the specific combination of your skills, experiences, and perspective that creates an unfair advantage. Answer these questions honestly. What have I done that's unusual? What's my background that's different? What do I see in the market that others miss? What's my unique perspective? What combination of skills do I have that's rare? What do I care about that others don't? What would I work on for free? Your answers to these questions point toward your game. Build there. Build the game, only you can win. Because the truth is, your unique combination of skills, experiences, and connections can't be competed against, only complemented or copied. And if you build fast enough and build well enough, you'll win before anyone can copy you. You've been playing the wrong game. You've been competing where you don't have an advantage. You've been fighting for scraps in a game someone else designed. You've been losing because you chose to lose the moment you entered someone else's game. The wealthy made a different choice. They built their own game. They made competition irrelevant. They created abundance instead of fighting over scarcity. Now you understand the strategy. Now you understand why they're winning. Now you understand why you're losing. The question is, are you going to keep playing their game? Or are you going to build your own? You've learned that competition is a trap. You've learned that creation is the answer. Now, let's talk about the invisible infrastructure that determines whether your game succeeds or fails. It's your network. Chapter 7. Your network determines your net worth. Most of the wealth you'll ever build won't come from your skills. It won't come from your hard work. It won't come from your intelligence. It will come from conversations you have with the right people at the right time. That's the secret the wealthy know and the poor refuse to accept. You want to know how deals get made? Not from job applications. From conversations with people who know people. You want to know how capital gets raised? Not from banks. From conversations with investors who heard about you from someone they trust. You want to know how businesses scale? Not from marketing. From relationships with partners, advisors, and collaborators who believe in what you're building. The wealth transfer happens in conversations, not in textbooks. The opportunities, the capital, the partnerships, the mentorship, all of it happens through relationships. This is why the wealthy are obsessed with their network. And this is why most people have terrible networks. Because most people network incorrectly, they network needily. They network transactionally. They network when they need something. The wealthy network strategically. They network with intention. They give value first. Your network is your net worth. Close relationships are closable deals. This is not a metaphor. This is a literal truth. The wealth transfer happens in conversations, not in textbooks. Let me show you how this actually works. You want to start a business. You need $100,000 in capital. You could go to a bank. But banks are skeptical of businesses without a track record. So you'd probably get rejected. Or you'd have to put up collateral you can't afford to lose. It would take months. It would be painful. Or you could have a conversation with someone in your network who has $100,000 to invest. They know you. They trust you. They believe in your idea because they know you've executed on ideas before. They write a check. Done. Capital acquired. Deal closed. That capital only became available through conversation, not through the banking system. Here's another scenario. You're trying to get meetings with potential clients for your consulting business. You could cold call. You could send emails. You could try to build a reputation from scratch. It would take years. You'd face rejection constantly. It would be brutal. Or you could have a conversation with someone in your network who says, "I know someone who needs exactly what you do. Let me introduce you." Suddenly, you have a meeting. Suddenly, you have a potential client. Done. Opportunity acquired. Conversation turned into revenue. That opportunity only became available through a relationship, not through your marketing. As a result, the wealthy live in a completely different universe from the poor. The wealthy have conversations that open doors. The poor send resumes into the void, hoping something sticks. Opportunities, capital, information, partnerships, and doors that would take decades to open through traditional channels open immediately through the right relationships. This is not luck. This is a network. This is relationships. Most people see their network as a set of friendships. Oh, I have friends from college, friends from work, friends from my church. That's not a network. That's a friend group. A network is infrastructure. It's designed. It's intentional. It's strategic. The wealthy network strategically with intention. They ask, who do I need to know to reach my next goal? Who are the people who know other people? Who can make introductions? Who are the people who have already built what I want to build? Then they deliberately build relationships with those people. The types of relationships the rich actively cultivate. So here's what the wealthy do. They build relationships in 3 categories. First, they build relationships with people ahead of them. Mentors. People who have already built what they want. People who can teach them, guide them, and open doors. These relationships are about learning and leverage. You're accessing someone else's experience and their network. A wealthy person who wants to build a $10 million business doesn't try to figure it out on their own. They find someone who has already built a $10 million business. They ask to meet them. They ask for advice. They offer something in return. Maybe they help them with something they need. Maybe they just build the relationship with genuine interest. But the goal is clear: learn from someone ahead of me and access their network. Second, they build relationships with peers at their level. Other entrepreneurs. Other investors. Other people are building things. These are collaborative relationships. You're not competing with these people. You're collaborating. You're sharing opportunities. You're making introductions. A wealthy person with a consulting business doesn't see other consultants as competition. They see them as potential collaborators. Maybe they specialize in different niches. Maybe they can refer business to each other. They could partner on larger projects. These relationships open opportunities that wouldn't exist if you were completely alone. Third, they build relationships with people behind them. Future partners. Future employees. Future collaborators. People who are where you were 5 years ago. You mentor them. You invest in them. You teach them. Years later, some of these people become your most valuable partners or employees. This creates a system. People ahead of you are teaching you. People around you are collaborating with you. People behind you that you're investing in. This network infrastructure becomes the source of all your best opportunities. But most people don't build this intentionally. They have whatever relationships happen to show up. Their friends from high school. Their co-workers. Maybe their family. There's no strategy. There's no intentionality. It's random. And random networks produce random opportunities. Poor networks produce poor opportunities. The wealthy are ruthlessly intentional about relationships. They know exactly who they need to know. They know what value they can provide to those people. They know how to build genuine relationships that last for decades. Here's the principle: give value first. Opportunities follow relationships, not the other way around. Most people try to extract value from relationships. Can you help me? Can you introduce me? Can you hire me? That's needy. That's transactional. The wealthy give value first. They provide information. They make introductions. They help without expecting anything in return. They solve problems. They add value. They become known as someone who creates value, not someone who extracts it. Then, years later, when they need something, people remember that they've been generous. People want to help them. People introduce them. People refer to them. Opportunities flow to them because they've been generous with their own network and their own value. Most people network incorrectly because they network needily. They network when they need something. They network to extract. They wonder why nobody helps them. The wealthy network is constantly in touch, whether or not they need anything. They build relationships when they don't need anything. They give value when there's no immediate return. They invest in people with a long-term perspective. The compound interest of relationships. Now, here's where it gets really powerful. It's the compound interest of relationships. A relationship built today might not create immediate value. But over 10, 20, or 30 years, the returns of a strong network are extraordinary. Someone you help today might become a major partner in 10 years. Someone you mentor might hire you, promote you, or refer you to opportunities you can't imagine. Someone you collaborate with might introduce you to your biggest client. Someone you build a genuine relationship with might become a lifelong friend and a business partners. The wealthy know this. They play the long game with relationships. They stay in touch. They remember details about people's lives. They look for ways to add value. They introduce people to each other. They become connectors. This relationship infrastructure becomes an invisible wealth machine. It generates opportunities for decades. You're never competing alone. You're never building alone. You have a network of people who want to help you because you've invested in them. Let me give you a real scenario. You meet someone at a conference. You have a good conversation. You exchange contact information. Most people never follow up. That relationship dies. A wealthy person follows up. They send a thoughtful email. They refer them to something valuable. They introduce them to someone in their network who might be able to help. They stay in touch periodically. A year later, they check in. 2 years later, they see them at another event. They continue building the relationship. 5 years later, that person needs something done that aligns perfectly with your business. They remember you. They think of you immediately. They hire you. They refer you to others. 1 5-year investment in a relationship turns into years of revenue and opportunities. Every relationship is a compound interest machine. Invest accordingly. This is not soft advice. This is a hard strategy for wealth building. Most people don't understand this. So they don't invest in relationships. They don't follow up. They don't stay in touch. They don't make introductions. They don't give value. They wonder why nobody helps them. They wonder why opportunities don't come. They have no network, so they have no opportunities. The wealthy understand that relationships compound. So they invest relentlessly. They understand that an hour spent building a genuine relationship with the right person might compound into decades of opportunities. That's a far better investment than an hour spent working on any single project. You now understand the truth. Your network is your net worth. Opportunities, capital, information, and partnerships flow through relationships. The wealthy are obsessed with building genuine, strategic, long-term relationships. The poor are isolated, transactional, and wondering why nobody helps them. Here's what you need to do. Identify the people you need to know to reach your goals. Identify one person in each category, someone ahead of you, someone at your level, someone you can invest in. Reach out to them. Give value. Build the relationship. Follow up. Stay in touch. Introduce them to others. Give without expecting return. Do this consistently. Do this intentionally. Do this with genuine interest in people, not with transactional motivation. In years to come, that network will be your greatest asset. It will generate more wealth than any skill you could develop. It will create opportunities you can't imagine today. You've learned that relationships compound. You've learned what the wealthy invest in. Now, let's talk about the knowledge gaps that are costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Chapter 8. The rich know what they don't know. There's a problem you don't see. You think your biggest obstacle to wealth is money, or time, or opportunity. You're wrong on all counts. Your biggest obstacle is ignorance. Specific ignorance. Ignorance about things that directly impact your wealth. And here's the thing that makes this really painful. You don't even know what you're ignorant about. You have blind spots. Massive blind spots. Areas where your lack of knowledge is actively destroying your wealth, and you don't even realize it's happening. The wealthy understand this. They understand that their future problems are solvable, but only if they know how to solve them. So they invest aggressively in closing their knowledge gaps. They hire consultants. They take courses. They hire coaches. They employ advisors. They pay for expertise. And every dollar they spend on this is one of their best investments. Ignorance is not bliss, it's expensive. Let me show you what I mean. Most people don't understand taxes. They file their taxes, they pay what they owe, and they think they're doing fine. They think taxes are just something that happens to them. There's not much they can do about it. That's ignorance. And that ignorance is costing them tens of thousands of dollars. Here's a real scenario. Two people both make $150,000 a year. Person A is a W-2 employee. They make a $150,000 salary. They file their taxes, they pay their taxes, and at the end of the year, they've paid approximately $40,000 to $45,000 in federal, state, FICA, and other taxes. They've paid about 27 to 30% of their income in taxes. They think that's normal. They don't realize they're being heavily taxed because they don't understand tax strategy. Person B is a business owner. They make $150,000 in business income. But they understand tax strategy. They structure their business as an S corporation. They pay themselves $80,000 in W-2 wages and take $70,000 in distributions. They hire a good tax accountant who ensures they're claiming all available deductions: home office, equipment, education, travel, meals, etc. They set up retirement plans. They invest in tax-advantaged accounts. At the end of the year, they've paid approximately $20,000 to $25,000 in taxes. Same income. Person A paid $40,000 plus. Person B paid $20,000. The difference is $20,000 plus. That $20,000 plus is not hidden somewhere. It's not gone. It's still there. Person B kept it. They paid an expert $2,000 to help them, and they saved $20,000. That's a 1,000% return on the expert's fee. That's what most people are missing. They think they can't afford to pay an expert. So they do it themselves. They lose $20,000. They saved the $2,000 expert fee and paid $20,000 in unnecessary taxes. That's not saving money. That's burning money. This pattern repeats across multiple areas of wealth: legal structure, investment strategy, business setup, financial planning, and insurance optimization. In each area, ignorance costs thousands. In some areas, it costs hundreds of thousands. What you don't know will cost you. What you learn will save you. This is not motivational. This is math. The wealthy know this. They don't try to figure everything out themselves. They don't think they can learn everything. They ask, where is my ignorance costing me the most? And what expert should I hire to close that gap? Then they hire the expert. They pay them. And that expert saves them far more than they cost. The tax problem, what the rich know that you don't. Let me focus on taxes for a moment, because they are one of the biggest wealth destroyers for most people. And most people are completely ignorant about it. Here's what the wealthy teach their children about taxes. Taxes are optional if you understand the rules. Not illegal tax evasion. Legal tax minimization through proper structure, deductions, and strategy. The tax code is over 70,000 pages long. It's impossibly complex. And that complexity is there on purpose. Because the IRS and the government assume that most people will just pay what they owe without understanding if that's the right amount. If you earn money as a W-2 employee, they've set up the system to withhold taxes from your paycheck automatically. You never see the money. You never think about it. You file at the end of the year, and you get a refund, or you owe a little. Either way, you've paid what the system decided you should pay. But here's the thing, that system is designed to maximize tax collection from employees, not to minimize your taxes. If you have self-employment income, business income, or investment income, the rules are completely different. Business owners can deduct business expenses. They can structure their business to optimize taxes. They can use retirement plans strategically. They can use investment strategies to offset income. They can use legal structures to minimize their tax burden. But if you don't know these things, you can't take advantage of them. You pay the maximum. You're not breaking any laws. You're just ignorant. And your ignorance costs you. Let me give you specific examples. If you run a business from home, you can deduct a portion of your mortgage or rent, your utilities, and your internet. Most people don't know this. So they don't deduct it. They lose thousands of dollars. If you pay for education related to your business, you can deduct it. Most people don't know this. So they don't deduct it. They lose thousands of dollars. If you travel for business, meals are partially deductible. Most people don't know this. So they don't deduct them. They lose thousands of dollars. If you buy equipment for your business, you can depreciate it or take Section 179 expensing. Most people don't know this. So they don't take advantage of it. They lose thousands of dollars. If you have self-employment income, you can set up a solo 401k or a SEP IRA and contribute significantly more than an employee can. Most people don't know this. So they don't set one up. They lose thousands of dollars in tax savings and future retirement funds. All of this is legal. All of this is available to you. And most of you are leaving it on the table because you don't know it exists. That's ignorance. And it's expensive. The wealthy hire accountants and tax strategists specifically to make sure they're not leaving money on the table. They might pay $5,000 a year for a good accountant. And that accountant saves them $20,000 in taxes they didn't know they were entitled to save. It's a no-brainer investment. But most people say, I can't afford a good accountant. So they use TurboTax, file their own taxes, leave $20,000 on the table, and think they've saved money. Paying an expert to pay less in taxes is the richest person's move. Full stop. Strategic education and expert consultation. Now, taxes are just one area. There are others. Most people don't understand business structure. Should you be a sole proprietor? An LLC? An S-Corp? A C-Corp? Each has distinct tax, liability, and operational implications. Most people just pick one randomly or choose whatever seems easiest. They don't realize their choice is costing them thousands in unnecessary taxes and putting them at legal risk. A wealthy person hires a business attorney for $2,000 to ensure they have the right structure. The structure saves them $10,000 plus a year in taxes. It pays for itself in the first year. Most people don't understand investment strategy. They put money in whatever their bank recommends. Or they don't invest at all because they're afraid. Or they invest in individual stocks without understanding diversification. Most people make fundamental mistakes in their investments that cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetimes. A wealthy person hires a financial advisor or educates themselves about investment strategy. They ensure their portfolio is diversified, tax-efficient, and aligned with their goals. The better strategy compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional wealth over decades. Most people don't understand contract law. They'll sign a business contract without having a lawyer review it. They'll get married without understanding prenuptial agreements. They'll buy property without understanding the legal implications. They'll start a business with a partner without a proper partnership agreement. These forms of ignorance can cost them massive amounts of money. A wealthy person always has important contracts reviewed by an attorney before signing. They understand the implications. They protect themselves. They avoid costly mistakes. The wealthy are voracious consumers of knowledge in areas that directly impact their wealth. They hire experts. They take courses. They join masterminds. They read constantly. They attend seminars. They invest relentlessly in closing knowledge gaps. They know that the cheapest education is the most expensive education because they don't learn the costly lessons through failure. They learn them from experts who've already made the mistakes. When it comes to big decisions, investments, business moves, and legal structures, it always pays to seek expert guidance. Because they know the cost of the expert is nothing compared to the cost of making a mistake without expert guidance. Expert advice is cheaper than expensive mistakes. This is not close. A $5,000 expert consultation that prevents a $100,000 mistake is the best investment you can make. But most people don't think this way. They think, I can figure it out myself. I can save the $5,000. And then they make the $100,000 mistake. They lose $95,000 net instead of spending $5,000 and protecting themselves. The best education is always education that prevents big mistakes. Not the education that teaches you something cool. Not the education that improves your productivity by 10%. The education that prevents you from losing $100,000. Here's what you need to understand. You have blind spots, areas where your ignorance is costing you serious money. You don't know what those blind spots are. That's why they're blind spots. You can't see them. But you can guess. What area of your finances are you least knowledgeable about? Taxes? Business structure? Investments? Insurance? Estate planning? Legal protection? Start there. Hire an expert. Pay them. Let them close the gap. The investment will pay for itself many times over. The wealthy made this decision. They decided that expert guidance is not a luxury. It's mandatory infrastructure for wealth building. They pay for tax, legal, financial, and business experts. That's why they're wealthy. Not because they're smarter. Because they're willing to pay for knowledge they don't have. You've learned that ignorance is expensive. You've learned that expert advice is the best investment. Now let's talk about the actual rhythm of wealth building, the sequence that most people get completely wrong. Chapter 9, The Rhythm of Money, Earn, Keep, Grow, Give, in that order. There's a sequence to wealth. A rhythm. An order. And most people have it completely backward. They try to grow money before they've kept it. They try to give before they've grown. They try to keep up before they've learned to earn deliberately. They're chasing wealth in chaos, wondering why they're not making progress. The wealthy know the sequence. They understand that it's not negotiable. You can't skip steps. You can't rearrange the order. You have to follow the rhythm. Earn, keep, grow, give. In that order. In that sequence. Everything else is fantasy. This is not theoretical. This is how wealth actually gets built. Every wealthy person you know follows this sequence. Every poor person you know broke this sequence somewhere. Maximize your earning power first. Everything else depends on it. This is step 1. This is the foundation. Without this, nothing else matters. You can't keep what you don't earn. Let's start with earning. Most people think about earning the wrong. They think a job is earning. They think a salary is earnings. They think getting a paycheck is maximizing their earning capacity. It's not. Earning is about your capacity to generate income, your earning power, your ability to produce value that someone will pay for. And most people have abdicated responsibility for maximizing this. They got a job. They've been in that job for 5 years. They're making what they were making when they started. Their earning capacity is flat. The wealthy understand that maximizing earning capacity is their number one priority in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. This is when they have the most earning potential. This is when they have the most runway. This is when the compounding of higher earnings matters the most. So they're deliberate about it. They ask, how do I increase my earning power? And they move strategically to answer that question. Some people do it by climbing the corporate ladder. They start in one position. They learn. They get promoted. They earn more. But they're strategic about it. They're not just waiting for promotions. They're actively moving toward higher-paying positions. They're building skills that command higher salaries. They're making calculated moves. Some people do it by building a business. They start with a service business, trading their time for money. But as the business grows, they hire people. They build systems. They scale. Now the business generates income independent of their effort. Their earning capacity has multiplied. Some people do it by developing a high-income skill. Sales, programming, copywriting, speaking, negotiation. They invest time in learning the skill. Now they can command higher rates. Their earning capacity has increased. Some people do it by creating passive income streams. They write a book. They built an online course. They create software. They build something once, and it generates income continuously. Their earning capacity is no longer limited by their time. The point is, they're deliberate. They're strategic. They're not just accepting whatever income shows up. They're actively working to maximize their earning power. Most people don't do this. They get a job. They work. They get a paycheck. They don't ask, how do I double my earning capacity? They don't strategize about it. They just accept what they're making. And then they wonder why they're not wealthy. Maximize your earning power first. Everything else depends on it. This is non-negotiable. If you're making $50,000 a year and your earning capacity is flat, you cannot build wealth. You can't. The math doesn't work. There's no way to grow from $50,000 a year if your income is stuck at $50,000 a year. But if you increase your earning capacity to $100,000 a year, now you have options. If you increase it to $200,000 per year, you now have real options. If you build a business that generates $500,000 a year without your daily effort, now you have freedom. The wealthy focus here first. They maximize earning capacity. Then they move to the next step. You can't grow what you don't keep. Okay, so you've increased your earnings. You're making more money. Great. Now what? Now you have to keep it. And this is where most people fail. Their lifestyle expands with their income. They make $100,000, and they spend $100,000. They make $200,000, and they spend $200,000. They make $500,000, and they spend $500,000. They're keeping nothing. They have no surplus. They have no capital to invest. They have no wealth. The wealthy have a different psychology about this. They have a rule. They live on a percentage of what they earn, and they keep the rest. Let me be specific. A wealthy person makes $200,000 a year. They live on $140,000. They keep $60,000. That's 30% kept. Another wealthy person makes $500,000 a year. They live on $300,000. They keep $200,000. Again, 30% kept. The percentage is consistent regardless of income level. What you don't keep leaks away. It doesn't matter how much you earn. If you're spending it all, you're building nothing. The poor think, when I make more money, then I'll save. They make more money, and they spend more money. They're chasing this fantasy where someday they'll make enough to spend everything and still save. That day never comes. The wealthy know, if you don't save at $50,000 a year, you won't save at $500,000 a year. Saving is a discipline. It's a habit. It's a decision. You have to make it now, regardless of income level. This is the discipline most people refuse to develop. They want to spend. They want to enjoy their money. They want to look successful. They want to live comfortably. And they tell themselves they'll save later. Later never comes. The wealthy decided to keep a percentage. Maybe it's 20%. Maybe it's 30%. Maybe it's 50%. Doesn't matter the exact percentage. The point is, it's non-negotiable. It's automatic. It happens first. The money is kept before it's spent. This is called paying yourself first. You earn the money. You keep a percentage automatically. Then you live on the rest. This seems backwards to most people. They think you live on what you need and save the leftovers. But leftovers are never enough. The gap between your income and your spending is the foundation of your wealth. Guard that gap fiercely. A person earning $100,000 and keeping $70,000 has a $30,000 wealth foundation per year. Over 10 years, that's $300,000 in capital to invest. Over 30 years, that's $900,000. A person earning $100,000 and keeping nothing has a zero wealth foundation. For over 30 years, they still have zero. It's not complicated. It's not subtle. Keeping a percentage is the foundation of all wealth. Everything else depends on it. The wealthy guard this gap fiercely. They refuse to let it shrink. As their income increases, they increase what they keep, not what they spend. They're disciplined about this. Most people do the opposite. As their income increases, they increase their spending. Their gap stays the same, or it shrinks. They're undisciplined about this. Grow what you keep. Give from what you've grown. Okay, so you've earned it deliberately. You've kept a percentage. Now you have capital. Now you invest it. Now you grow it. This is where wealth compounds. Your kept capital is invested. It generates returns. Those returns are reinvested. The returns compound. Over the decades, that kept capital becomes wealth. $100,000 at a 10% annual return grows to $259,000 in 10 years. It becomes $1.6 million in 30 years. That's what compounding does. But most people never get here. They earn, but they don't keep. So they have no capital to invest. They have no compounding. They have no wealth. The wealthy get here. They've earned. They've kept. Now they invest in things that grow. A diversified portfolio. A business. Real estate. Intellectual property. Whatever generates return. The key is that they're not just getting a return on their money. They're reinvesting those returns. The returns generate additional returns. That's compounding. That's exponential growth. Most people try to spend the returns. They earn 10% on their investments, and they spend it. Now they're not compounding. They're just using investment income to fund their lifestyle. They're not building wealth. They're funding consumption. The wealthy reinvest the returns for decades. Only after they've built substantial wealth do they use the returns to fund their lifestyle. By then, the returns are so large that they can live off them comfortably without touching the principal. Finally, and this is critical, they give. Once they've built wealth beyond what they need, they give. To charity. To family. To causes they believe in. They give generously. But they give from the growth. Not from the foundation. Not from the capital. They've protected the foundation for decades. Now it's so large that they can give from the growth and still be wealthy. Most people try to give too early. They earn a little, they give a little. They feel good about it, but they're sabotaging their own wealth building. They should be keeping and growing. They're giving before they've grown. Earn first. Keep second. Grow third. Give last. That's the order. This is non-negotiable for wealth. Let me give you a real scenario. Two people both make $100,000 a year for 40 years. Person A, they earn $100,000. They keep nothing. They spent $100,000. Over 40 years, they've earned $4 million total. They have zero wealth. They're still working at 65. Person B, they earn $100,000. They keep $30,000, 30%. They invest it. At a 10% annual return, that $30,000 compounds. After 40 years, they've accumulated $1.88 million. They're wealthy. They can retire. They can give. Same income. Different sequence. Different outcome. The sequence is not negotiable. Earn, keep, grow, give. In that order. That's how wealth gets built. You now understand the rhythm. Earn deliberately and strategically. Keep a percentage regardless of income level. Grow what you keep through investment and compounding. Give from the growth after wealth is established. Most people have this sequence wrong. They try to give before they've grown. They try to grow before they've been kept. They try to keep ahead of them before they've earned it deliberately. They're doing it backward. The wealthy follow the sequence. That's why they're wealthy. That's why they have options. That's why they have freedom. Here's what you need to do. Maximize your earning capacity. Decide what percentage you're going to keep. Set it up automatically. Invest what you keep. Reinvest the returns. Protect the foundation. Give from the growth. Do this for 30 years, and you'll be wealthy. Guaranteed. The math is non-negotiable. You've learned the sequence of wealth building. You've learned the rhythm. Now let's talk about the final secret, the one that ties everything together. The one that separates people who do all this and people who don't. Chapter 10, the final secret. Wealth is a habit, not a goal. Most people are waiting for wealth to happen. They're waiting for the big break. They're waiting for the business idea that's going to change everything. They're waiting for the inheritance. They're waiting for the lucky break. They're waiting for something external to happen so they can become wealthy. And they're never going to become wealthy. Here's why. Wealth is not an event. Wealth is not a destination. Wealth is not something that happens to you. Wealth is a lifestyle. Wealth is a way of living. Wealth is a series of daily decisions that compound into wealth over decades. The wealthy didn't achieve wealth. They didn't hit a goal and then coast. They live according to principles that create wealth continuously. Every single day. For decades. That's why they're wealthy. Not because they got lucky. Because they made it their identity. Wealth is a habit. It's who you are, not what you achieve. This is the final secret. This is what separates the wealthy from everyone else. Wealth is built through daily decisions, not annual resolutions. Think about successful people you know. Not just wealthy people, but successful people in any area. Athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, academics. What separates them from everyone else? It's not one big decision. It's not one big achievement. It's consistency. It's daily habits. It's showing up every single day and doing the thing. Michael Jordan didn't become great because of one championship. He became great because he showed up at 5 a.m. every morning and worked on his craft for decades. That's a habit. Warren Buffett didn't become wealthy because of one big investment. He became wealthy because he read financial reports every single day for 60 years. That's a habit. Oprah didn't become successful because of one show. She became successful because she showed up every single day to interview people and tell stories for decades. That's habit. The wealthy understand this. They don't set a wealth goal and expect to achieve it someday. They set up habits that create wealth continuously. Every single day, the wealthy are making decisions about money. They're tracking their spending. They're thinking about how they allocate their resources. They're protecting their time. They're investing. They're learning. They're building relationships. They're protecting their attention. They're refusing distractions. These are not things they do once a year when they review their finances. These are things they do daily. It's woven into who they are. It's their identity. They're not trying to be wealthy. They are wealthy. It's who they are. Most people, on the other hand, have no wealth habits. They don't track their money. They don't make strategic spending decisions. They don't protect their time. They don't invest consistently. They don't learn continuously. They don't build relationships intentionally. They live reactively. They live according to whatever feels right in the moment. Then once a year, they make a New Year's resolution. This year, I'm going to get my finances in order. This year, I'm going to save money. This year, I'm going to start investing. They make the resolution. They're excited about it. They follow it for a week. Then they forget about it. By February, they're back to their old habits. Wealth is not built through annual resolutions. Wealth is built through daily habits. One resolution lasts a week. One habit lasts a lifetime. The wealthy have built wealth habits. They're not trying to be wealthy. They've become wealthy through consistent application of principles. Daily. 4 years and decades. Here's what you need to understand. The difference between the wealthy and the poor is not intelligence or luck. It's the decision to act, the commitment to consistency, and the refusal to compromise on these principles. That's it. That's the entire difference. The habits that create wealth. So what are these habits? What is the daily practice of the wealthy? First, they track their money. They know their numbers exactly. They know their income. They know their spending. They know their investments. They know their net worth. They know this monthly, not just annually. They're paying attention to their money constantly. Most people have no idea. They know approximately how much they make. They have no idea how much they spend. They have no idea what they're worth. They're operating blind. The wealthy operate with complete visibility. They know every dollar. They know where it came from. They know where it went. And that knowledge allows them to make informed decisions. Second, they make strategic spending and investment decisions daily. They don't spend reactively. When they spend, they ask, is this aligned with my values? Does this create wealth or destroy it? Is this investment going to compound? They're conscious. They're intentional. They're strategic. Most people spend reactively. They want something, they buy it. They get a craving, they consume. They're not asking questions. They're not being strategic. They're being controlled by their emotions and their desires. The wealthy refuse this. They're in control. Every dollar spent is a decision. Every dollar invested is strategic. Third, they invest time in learning. They read. They listen to podcasts. They take courses. They attend seminars. They're learning every single day. Not passively consuming. Actively learning things that move their wealth forward. Most people, after they finish formal education, stop learning. They go to work. They come home. They consume entertainment. They're not learning. They're not growing. They're not advancing. The wealthy commit to continuous learning. It's a daily habit. They understand that what you learn determines what you earn. So they invest in learning continuously. Fourth, they build and protect their relationships. They stay in touch with their network. They make introductions. They give value. They invest in key relationships. Consistently. Not just when they need something. Most people neglect their relationships. They get busy. They don't follow up. They don't stay in touch. They wonder why nobody helps them. The wealthy maintain their relationships as a daily practice. It's habitual. It's built into their schedule. It's non-negotiable. Fifth, they protect their attention ruthlessly. They say no to distractions. They say no to entertainment that doesn't serve them. They say no to people who drain them. They say no to activities that don't produce wealth. They're ferocious about it. Most people say yes to everything. They're distracted. They're scattered. They're consumed by entertainment, social media, and noise. The wealthy guard their attention like it's their most valuable asset, because it is. Every moment of attention is allocated strategically. Sixth, They operate from an abundance mindset instead of scarcity. They're looking for opportunities to add value. They're looking for ways to collaborate. They're looking for problems to solve. They're not afraid to take risks because they operate from the belief that there's enough for everyone. Most people operate from scarcity. They're afraid. They're trying to hold on to what they have. They're afraid to invest. They're afraid to take risks. They're playing defense. They're losing. The wealthy operate from offense. They're creating. They're building. They're investing. They're taking risks because they understand that growth requires risk. Wealth is boring. These habits are not exciting. They're not thrilling. They're mundane. But that's the point. Wealth is built through consistent mundane actions, not through luck or heroic efforts. Most people are waiting for the big break, the exciting thing, the hero's journey. That never comes. Wealth comes from boring consistency, the final challenge. So here's what this all comes down to. You now know the secrets. You understand the principles. You understand how wealth actually works. The question is, are you going to treat wealth building as a lifestyle, or are you going to continue treating it as something that might happen to you? Because that's the choice. That's the only choice that matters. The wealthy have made their choice. They've decided that being strategic with money is simply how they operate. It's not a goal. It's not something they're trying to do. It's who they are. They track their money. They make strategic decisions. They protect their attention. They invest in growth. They build relationships. They operate from abundance. They do this daily. It's their identity. Are you going to do the same? Or are you going to keep doing what you've been doing? Because here's the truth. If you keep doing what you've been doing, you'll keep getting what you've been getting. If you're not building wealth now, you're not going to build wealth later. The circumstances won't change. The opportunity won't appear. You have to change. You have to decide. You have to commit. You have to start building wealth habits. Start today. Not tomorrow. Not on New Year's Day. Today. Right now. What's one wealth habit you're going to implement this week? Track your money? Create an investment plan? Reach out to someone in your network? Take a course? Say no to a distraction? What's one thing? Do that. Then do it again next week. Then again. Consistency. Dailiness. Repetition. Habit. That's how the wealthy built their wealth. That's how you're going to build yours. You've now heard all 10 secrets. You understand that permission is something you claim, not something you wait for. You understand that money follows attention, not effort. You understand that your purchases are stories, and most are lies you're paying for. You understand that debt destroys and equity builds. You understand that time is your actual wealth. You understand that competition is a trap and creation is the answer. You understand that your network is your net worth. You understand that ignorance is expensive and expertise is the best investment. You understand the rhythm of earn, keep, grow, give. And you understand that wealth is a habit, not a goal. These aren't suggestions. These aren't ideas to think about. These are principles that determine whether you become wealthy or stay poor. The wealthy live according to these principles. Every single day. For decades. That's why they're wealthy. Now you know. Now you have no excuse. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to go back to your normal life and forget everything you've heard? Are you going to think about these principles intellectually but never apply them? Are you going to wait for the perfect time to start? Or are you going to make a decision right now? The same decision the wealthy made. The decision that you're going to stop waiting and start building? Are you going to apply these principles daily? Is the decision that wealth is going to be your identity? That decision is available to you right now. You can make it. This moment. This second. You can decide that you're done with poverty. Done with scarcity. Done with waiting for permission. Done with trading time for money. Done with competing for scraps. Done with being controlled by your ignorance. You can decide that starting today, you're going to be different. You're going to track your money. You're going to protect your attention. You're going to invest in growth. You're going to build your network. You're going to eliminate debt. You're going to increase your earning power. You're going to keep a percentage. You're going to invest it. You're going to let it compound. You're going to become wealthy. Not because luck finds you. Not because circumstances change. But because you decided to be wealthy, you committed to the daily habits that create wealth. The wealthy made this decision. That's why they're ahead. Now it's your turn. The question is not whether you can become wealthy. You can. You absolutely can. The system works. The principles work. The habits work. The question is, will you? The difference between someone who becomes wealthy and someone who doesn't is intelligence. It's not luck. It's not background. It's the decision to act and the commitment to consistency. That's it. That's the secret. That's everything. You have all the information. You have all the principles. You have everything you need to build wealth. What you do with it is up to you. The wealthy didn't wait for permission to build their wealth. Neither should you. Start now. Don't think about it. Don't plan it. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make one decision today. Take one action today. Build one habit this week. Then do it again next week. And the week after. And the month after. And the year after. Years from now, you'll look back, and you won't recognize yourself. You'll have wealth. You'll have freedom. You'll have options. You'll have security. You'll have abundance. And it will have all started with a single decision you made today. The question is, are you going to make that decision? Are you? Because your answer to that question determines everything about your future. The wealthy already answered it. They said yes to wealth. They said yes to the daily habits. They said yes to the principles. That's why they're wealthy. Your answer will determine whether you join them or whether you stay where you are. What's it going to be? Let me be direct. You now know what the wealthy teach their children in private. Permission is something you give yourself, not something you wait for. Money follows your attention, so guard it ruthlessly. Every purchase tells a story about your insecurity or your abundance. Choose which story you're telling. Debt enslaves, equity liberates. There is no middle ground. Invest in time before you invest in returns, because time is the only real wealth. Stop competing in games you didn't design and build your own. Your network is your net worth. Invest in it strategically, not casually. Pay experts to close your knowledge gaps because ignorance is the most expensive education of all. Earn deliberately, keep relentlessly, grow consistently, and give generously in that order. And finally, understand that wealth is not a goal to be reached. Wealth is a habit you practice every single day. These aren't suggestions. These aren't nice ideas to think about. These are the principles that separate the wealthy from everyone else. The wealthy aren't smarter than you. They're not luckier. They simply decided to operate differently. They decided to think differently. They decided to act differently. So here's your final challenge. Which decision are you going to make today? Will you continue living as you've been, making the same choices that got you here? Or will you decide right now, in this moment, that you're going to apply these 7 secrets? That you're going to stop waiting for permission? That you're going to protect your attention? That you're going to build your own game? That you're going to invest in your network and in experts? That you're going to earn, keep, grow, and give? The wealthy are waiting for nothing. They're acting. They're building. They're compounding. The question is, are you going to be like them? Or are you going to be like everyone else? Your answer to that question determines everything. Your future. Your freedom. Your wealth. The choice is yours.